Hello, everyone. So we will start today talking more about what is Node.js. But before we go to talk about the most important stuff about Node.js and the details, we need to explain one small thing. What's the difference between JavaScript if you run it in the back end or in the front end? So basically, JavaScript is a programming language that it can be run in the front end, or also it can be run in the back end. So we need to explain a little bit what's the difference between them. And then we talk about Node. So first, I will create index.html, which is basically the HTML file that we will all be created when we want to start with a new project. And I will link my JavaScript file to this HTML. So as we always do in our work before, when we wanted to start a new website, we start with creating HTML and we link our JavaScript. Now, this JS file, is it the JS as a front end or a back end? This is what we want to explain. So to run this JavaScript file, we can run here as an example. For example, we write console log, let's say number 20. And then if I run this file in a live server, we will see now, just give me a second to run the file. Now, this is our HTML. If we go to the inspect, we will see JavaScript is printing 20. So what we understand here, if we want to run JavaScript, we need to use the browser to be able to see it in the console. But as a Node.js, I can also run the project in the terminal, which using the command node and then the name of the file, which is index.js. And if I click enter here, I will see also it gives me 20. So what that means? That means I can run the JavaScript file in the terminal itself or in the browser. But then what's the difference between them? Let's try to console log something called document. Let's check the document in the browser. The document in the browser is basically our HTML document, which has the HTML, and the HTML, if we go to the children of HTML, you will see the head tag and body tag. And if you go to the head tag, check the children of the head tag, you will see the meta title and the script. And of course, if you have any elements in the body, you will see these elements in the body tag. So console log document in the browser, it will give me the whole HTML document. All right, let's try to run now the project in the terminal. It gives me an error, document is not defined. Document is not defined here means because when you run the project in the terminal, so the machine will not have any access to your HTML or CSS because the HTML here has access to the JavaScript. But in the terminal, when you run JavaScript itself, you don't have any access back to the HTML. So that's why document is not defined. And from that example, we will understand something really important is, sorry about that, we will understand a note here that when you want to run JavaScript as a backend, then you have to run it in the terminal, on the terminal. So when we want to use JavaScript as a backend, we need to run that in the terminal. We will not use the browser anymore. So what I will do, I will delete our HTML file. We are not going to use it anymore. I will remove the console log document because there is no access for the document in the backend. And we will start talking now about JavaScript as just a JavaScript file. And we will run our code in the terminal using the command node and the name of the file. If you don't install Node, then it will give you an error. But if you install Node, you can check the version you have by typing node-v, and you will see the version of the Node. In my case, it's v18.17.1. It could be for you the same. It could be different. It's not really important. Now, let's clear our terminal. Let's run the project node index.js. Of course, we will see nothing because there is nothing here. But as soon as I have added console log, let's say 2 plus 3, it will directly give me the result file. Now, what should we start talking about when we talk about Node.js? Yesterday, in the previous video, we talked about two things in Node.js, which are the file system and the operating system. So basically, we call them as FS and OS. And where you can find them in the Node.js documentation. So if you go to the nodejs.com, and then you go to the documentation, you will see both of them. Like here, you will see file system, and if you scroll down a bit more, you will see something called operating system. Why we need to talk about these two? Because these two are somehow important, and it's an example that you can apply on any other libraries. Also, one thing I need to mention here, when you install Node.js, these two libraries, or not just these two, but almost all of these here, it will be already installed with Node.js, so you don't have to do anything. All you have to do now, you have to require this thing to be able to use them. What require mean? Require basically mean like when you import something, like you have something, you save it in some place, and now you need to use it, so you have to import it in your file. Now, when we do require, we mean that give me all the code related to this library here to be able to apply it in this file. Let's explain what's the syntax of require, what's the syntax of how we write JavaScript in the backend, and then we give you an example about file system and operating system. The syntax of require, it will be defining a variable, let's say const, and here we type the name of the variable, it doesn't matter what it is, and then equal, we go to require, I need to require what you want to require here, I want to require the name of the thing that I want to use. So in this case, if I will start with operating system, I will define the variable, you can call it whatever you want, but I will call it OS because it's a little bit explaining the package itself, and then we run here. Require what I want to require OS, which is basically operating system that is already it's already exists when you have installed Node.js. But if you don't install Node.js, it will give you error, OS is not defined. Let's see now what we would do, what we will have if we just in console log OS. Like now I want to console log this OS. Let me see what this package has. Run the project, node index.js. We will see a bunch of things. We don't care about all these details, but at least you can see now we have all the functions that we can access in this library. For example, I can access the home direction, which will give me the home directory in your machine, host name, which will give you the host name. Also, you have access to the platform, which is which laptop you are using, which platform you are using, user info, version, machine, blah, blah, blah. Let's give an example, machine. So we go with the os.machine as a function. And now when we run, it will give me this is the machine that I am using. Let me just clear the terminal, give another example, platform. And now the platform that I am using is Linux, host name. It will give you the host name, etc. So this is all about the operating system, which is basically, it will give you some information about the operating system, the machine that you are using to control something in your website. It can be, for example, you have some access to the Mac users or to the Windows users or to the Linux users, and you can do that basically with if statement, like if os.hostname equal, let's say, Mac, for example, or Windows, then we do something. But if the user use another platform, if the user use another platform, then do something else, etc. So this is all about the operating system. And again, it just gives you access to the information in to the platform information or to the machine information that you are using. Now let's move to the file system. File system, which is basically would be the same idea, const the name, we call it fs, or you can call it whatever you want, equal to require fs, which means file system. How can I be sure that I have required the the package correctly, we need to console log the name of the variable here, console log fs, to be able to see what data we have inside this package. Let's run the code. Again, we will see a bunch of data we don't care about, but as you see here, we have access to these all functions that we can use inside the file system. For example, we can remove directory, we can rename some file, we can read the file, the data inside the file, we can write some data inside the file, we can make a new directory. And now we will give you an example about how to make folders, how to make files, how to rename files, remove, and read as well. But before we give you an example, let me explain quickly the syntax of the Node.js, because basically 90% from the time when you write Node.js or when you write a JavaScript function in Node.js, you need to use callback function. And I hope you already know what callback functions before, but if you don't, please search about what's callback function. Basically, the syntax will be, for example, file system dot, and then here we have the function we need to use. It doesn't matter what it be. It can be like read file, write file, or it can be rename the file itself. And then here we will have, let's say, some information that we need to write. I will also explain it later, but the most important what I want to explain is the callback functions. And the callback functions is basically the function that you will run after the main function is running. Let's give you a real example. Let's say I want to test if there is a folder here called informations. I want to see if there is a folder called information. So I write fs.access, and then what's the name of the file you want to check, or the folder? I want to check if there is something called informations. Now, here, the most important, here we have the callback function, and it's basically a normal function. You can write here a function, and this function is something. Why we need that? Because this is basically means, sorry about this one. So this is mean. When you check if there is a folder or file, then do something else after you check. Like after you finish the first thing you should do now the callback function as a result of what we have before. We could receive here an error, we could receive some data, and we need to console log the data we used or the error we received. Let's try console log data. So in this case, when we run the project, we will see we could see an error, but it's not basically an error. This is the real data, and it says no such file or directory access. Information, sorry, there is no file or folder called informations, because basically I don't have here any file or folder called informations. Now, how we can create that one? Let's create one quickly, but look what I will do for you. I will write like if there is no folder, then create the folder, and otherwise create a file inside that folder. So here I want to have access to the informations. It will give me an error. I receive a data, so I will write, okay, if I got data, and if the data has error number. So if I receive data like this one, and if the data has error number like this one. So if I do have that, so that means the folder is not exist. Let me create the folder. How we create the folder? We create the folder with fs as well. So we go fs dot make directory. I want to create a new directory. I will call the directory informations. And then, as always, we want to receive a callback function. So it's a function, and this function, it will give me either an error or not, but I will write console log here, for example, done. So that means the folder has been created correctly, just in case there is no folder called informations. Now let's run the project. I don't have that error before. I see that with the word done, which means we arrived to the line 19. So that means the informations folder should be created. If we take a look here, we will see we have informations folder. So if you have informations folder, just create that folder. But else, so let's say if you don't have it, create it. But if you have it, let's remove it. fs dot remove directory, and the directory we want to remove is informations. And also we will have a callback functions, and this callback function will be console log, let's say remove. Now let's run the project because we already have the folder. It should be removed now. And now you see the folder is removed. We see here removed. Now we don't have the folder. If we run the project, it will be created. And each time you run the project, it will be in one, create the folder, one, remove the folder, create the folder, remove the folder. But I don't want to remove the folder anymore because it's not logic being like just creating and removing. If the folder is not exist, create the folder. Okay, now let's run the project. It will create a folder for me. But if the folder is exist, I want to create a file inside the folder. So fs dot write a file, and the file I want to write, let's say it's informations about students, and the type of the file is important, and I will write dot just, let's say txt. So I want to write this file. What should I write inside this file? I should write hello students, let's say just a normal text, and then we have a callback function. This callback function, either it will receive an error or a data. We can do like error and data, and if there is an error, console log the error, blah, blah, blah. But to save your time, I will just console log, let's say done, and then we see if we have an error or not. Now, let's run the project. We can see we have created the folder, the file with hello students, but the file has been created outside the folder that I want. And why is that? And this is because I didn't write here the right directory. So instead of just creating the file called student.txt, it should be creating the file inside informations folder and name the file as students.txt. Now, let's remove this. And the informations file, I will do something like style.css. I want to write a CSS file inside informations, and the code I want to write inside the CSS, let's say just a normal CSS code. For example, we have a p tag, and this p tag has a color of red. So this is a normal CSS code, and I want to write it inside the information style.css. If we run the file, now we should see inside the informations, we have style.css file, and the CSS has the CSS code. And again, you can create a JavaScript file and to create a function, for example, or a variable x equal 10. And now if we run the file, we should see we have another file has been created, style.js, which has the JS code. You can create just normal, a text file with just a normal text. Again, run the project. You will see the text file has been created with a normal text. You can create a PDF file if you want. Also, you should see a PDF file has been created. So basically, you can create any type of file that you want, and you have to define what's the text you want to write, and just add callback functions to show you if you have an error or if the code has been worked correctly. Now I want to read the data inside the file. I will not deload, I will just comment this out so you can check them later. To read the data, fs.read file. For read file, what file do you want to read? I want to read from the informations. I want to read what we have inside the JavaScript file, for example, what we have inside style.js file. When I want to read this file, I will have a functions, of course, as a callback, but here is something different. When you read, so you receive data from this file. So the data should be received here. So I will write here data. And now when you write console log data, what you will see, let's clear that console running, you see null. Why is null? Because when you read file, you should always expect two informations. You have an error or you have a data. So error or data, and I will console log the data. Because when I write just data, so in this case, it was understanding as an error and there is no error. So that's why it gives me null. But now I define something here called error. You can call it error or whatever you want. The name is not really important. The most important is the data is always the second argument in the function. Now, when we run, we see we receive data, but the data is all as a buffer data. And in this case, we can just easily make it as a string with dot string to make it as a string. And now when we run, we see variable x equal to 10. We can read what we have inside the CSS file as well. And we will see we have the style p color red. What we have inside the PDF file, we can see also what we have inside the PDF file. So basically, in a different word, the F file system package inside Node.js, it will give you access to your files, folders, create, read, remove, and rename. Let's try to rename a folder. So I want to rename the style.pdf, or let's try to rename style.js to a new name. And the new name should be a second argument before the callback. And the new name, it should be, instead of style.js, I will write here javascript.js. Now, console log done, because when you rename the file, you just rename the file, or you have an error, you don't have a real data, basically just an error or renaming. And now we have to keep our eyes on this file, style.js. When we run the project, we should see the file has been renamed from just style.js to javascript.js. And of course, we can read the data inside this file. So we can read what we have inside JavaScript by using the same code, error or data. And here we write data, we run the project, we should see the data as a buffer data, but make it as a string, it will show you the real one, variable x equal 10. So let's recap it quickly. To use JavaScript in the backend, you have to use the terminal. You don't need any HTML file. You can require a few built-in packages inside Node.js, like file system, operating system, like crypto, error, events, HTTP. We cannot go through all of them, but if you want, you can watch videos. Or if you have any questions about them, you can, of course, ask us later. For the operating system, it will give you information about your platform, which we already did that before, and file system. It will give you access to control your file system by creating folders, removing file, renames